Gonzaga muscled their way to a massive win over Alabama on Monday night in what felt like a Final Four matchup, and that's a great sign of things to come for Mark Few's team.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates and live reactions on all things Zag athletics. Folks, right now, new customers can bet just $5 on FanDuel, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets that you can use all across the app, so download the FanDuel app today. Well, Gonzaga rolled to a massive win over Alabama on Monday night, their first game in the Players Era Festival. We're going to break it all down here. It's a live reaction show just a few minutes after the game finished up. We're going to talk about all the fun that we saw in this matchup against Alabama. We're also going to give you a quick preview of Tuesday's opponent, the Maryland Terrapins, who, again, as I'm recording this, are currently playing UNLV. So we will see how this game shakes out and give a bit more of a full, comprehensive look at this matchup later on. But tremendous stuff from Mark Few's team on Monday night. There was, if you listen to the broadcast, they seemed to continually bring up and want to discuss, oh, well, this Gonzaga team hasn't been tested like this Alabama team. And like, they're not wrong. Alabama had already played, 3 top 10 teams before this, but it certainly felt like, Gonzaga's never seen anybody like this before. And that just was not the case. I mean, Gonzaga looked absolutely dominant. They imposed their will down low in this one, scored 95 points in this matchup. Just all around great stuff. They're now 2-1 all time against Alabama in the Mark Few era, having split that previous home and home series. They're now 28-13 against SEC teams, by the way. So in case there's any concern of like, oh, can they hang with the big boys in the SEC? 28-13. They've won 6 of their last 7 games against the SEC, including Oklahoma earlier this year, Georgia last year in the NCAA tournament, now, of course, beating Alabama on Monday night. Excellent stuff. We'll do the good and the bad, and we'll talk about our 5 keys to the game that we laid out on Monday, on Monday's show. We'll talk about those keys and kind of how they played out in this game. We'll start with the good. Folks, Tyon Grant Foster was outstanding in this game. I mean, just a truly one-of-a-kind player for Gonzaga in terms of his versatility, his impact on both ends of the floor, his just kind of infectious energy and personality. He finished this game with 21 points, was tied for the team lead with Graham Ike. He was 9 of 16 shooting the rock, which doesn't really show the full picture because he was 1 of 4 from 3, which means he was 8 of 12 from inside the arc. He had 7 rebounds. He had a pair of blocks and a steal. He was 2 of 4 from the free throw line, definitely still an area of concern for Grant Foster, but 5 of his 7 rebounds were on the offensive glass. The time and time again in this game, there was, I think, a stretch where he did like 2 or 3 possessions in a row in the first half where he just out-jumped somebody, or if they got to the ball at the same time, he just straight up ripped it away from them. At some point this season, like every time we play a new opponent, I keep thinking, looking at the other team, like, wow, like those guys aren't very strong. Like Graham Ike's ripping the ball away from them, or Tyon Grant Foster's ripping the ball away from them. And I think eventually it's like, oh, well, we just might have the strongest team in college basketball. We're literally just taking the ball away from people, pushing them out of the way, just being able to impose whatever we want. And Alabama tightened up their rebounding a little bit, and it was more even in the second half of this game. But early on, it seemed like they were not at all prepared for the fact that they would play good defense for 15, 20, 25 seconds of a possession, force a tough shot, and then just kind of expect to get the rebound. And Gonzaga was able to get it time and time again. Grant Foster, big part of that. He had that alley-oop dunk from Graham on a pass from Graham Ike. He had the blocked shot, the back-to-back possessions where he stopped the Alabama in transition, including a blocked shot that was just otherworldly athleticism. He was incredible. If you're thankful for anything this week, as it is Thanksgiving week, be thankful for Judge Marla Poland, who gave Grant Foster his preliminary injunction, because boy, howdy, did the Zags need him on Monday night in Las Vegas. Other good stuff. The bigs were dominant. That was one of the keys to the game, so we won't talk about it as much down there. But Graham Ike, 21 points, 11 boards, and 8 of 19, and he missed his first 6 shots. So he was 8 of 13 after missing those first 6. He had 3 assists as well. Braden Huff, 18 points, 8 boards, 9 of 12 shooting. He had 2 assists. Just remarkable stuff from them. The amount of times Braden Huff caught a pass at the free throw line, did his little spin cycle, and got an easy shot at the rim. Graham Ike, again, after he settled in, was just outstanding at commanding the ball. If they didn't double him and he got to his spots, he could hit that little mid-range fadeaway. Just everything that you needed those two guys to do in this game, they full on did it. Also a great game from Mario Saint-Supery. For the first part of the season, the playing time has been split, about 20 minutes for Mario, 20 minutes for Braden Smith. I wondered, and I didn't talk about it too much before the game, but I wondered if this might be the game where that split doesn't end up happening. And that's the case. Mario played 32 minutes in this game. Braden Smith played 8. And Mario was great. 10.6 assists. He had 3 turnovers, but in a super high possession game. I'm not overly concerned about that. I mean, 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio for a freshman playing the best team he's played in his career. I'm going to take that. That's pretty darn good. Weird game from him in the sense that he had 10 points, but he was 0 of 2 from the field. He just happened to go 10 of 11 from the free throw line. Very good at drawing contact, getting to the stripe, a very valuable skill. And of course, making them at a 10 out of 11 clip. You'll take that every single time. Also, shout out Gonzaga for coming out strong in the second half. That's not always been a strength of Gonzaga, as we've seen many times where Gonzaga has come out flat to start a second half and been outscored in the first 4 minutes. And in this game, that was not the case. They had kind of been down most of the first half. I think took their first, for like 8 or 9 minutes, they were down. They took their first lead at 34-33 with like 5 or 6 minutes left, held a small lead for most of the rest of the half, and then built onto that lead to start the second half. Again, that is not often something you see Gonzaga do. So I think it was great and a sign of very good coaching that they were able to do that in this game. Also, on the good things, Steele Venters was 4 of 8 from 3, 12 points for him. He didn't do everything great. He had some foul issues. He actually fouled out of this game despite coming off the bench. But 4 of 8 from 3, he had some really clutch ones. He had one with 5 seconds left in the first half. Hit a big one to end a 10-0 run that Alabama went on midway through the second half. Just when Gonzaga needed him to hit a bucket, he hit a bucket. And I thought that's what he's on the roster to do, and it was great to see him be able to do that. Some of the not so good stuff. Gonzaga was pretty awful in transition in this game. It seemed like when they would get transition opportunities, they threw them away immediately. There was just like passes that went straight out of bounds. They dribbled the ball off their feet. Jalen Worley went one-on-one and had the ball stripped from him. It seemed like as soon as they got out in transition and realized they had a chance to run, they sort of panicked and froze a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what that was. One of the keys to the victory was to control the tempo. I'm not entirely sure Gonzaga actually did that. And it felt like when they wanted to run, they almost sped themselves up. Not something I'm super concerned about going forward, but it was a little odd that it seemed like every time they had an opportunity for easy points in transition was when they would start making careless mistakes. Braden Smith did not have a good game. He had just a 1 rebound and 1 turnover. He was only 0 of 1 from the field. It was a pretty deep 3. I think it was late in the clock. Not a terrible shot necessarily, but tried to force things that weren't there. He fell asleep on defense on a possession where Gonzaga played really good defense for 26 seconds, and then he lost his guy who backdoor cut. I think it was Phylon. Backdoor cut and got an easy dunk. Just not a good game from him. Mario is outplaying him. There's really no debate about that, and that's not that Smith has been playing bad, but he was not very good in this game, and he wasn't even actively bad. It's just not very impactful, and I'm curious how that's going to continue to play out because Mario is pretty clearly the guy who should be playing the majority of minutes at the 1 going forward. There's also some free throw shooting issues. They ended up good, 19 of 26 overall because they went 13 of 14 in the second half, but they shot 6 of 12 from the free throw line in the first half. Still not an area of strength for Grant Foster, still not an area of strength for Braden Huff. Certainly something that you'd like to see them clean up a little bit more. We'll talk about the 3-point shooting in the second segment as well, in case you're wondering why I haven't brought that up yet. And then there was some weird lineup stuff. I think it's just Mark Few trying to figure it out, but there was a lineup, and I saw a few other people post about this lineup on social media, which kind of validated me a little bit because I was like, this feels like a lineup that is not designed to score any points. And it was while they were playing that lineup that Alabama went on a 10-0 run. The lineup was Smith, Innocente, Venters, Worley, and Huff. And obviously, Venters is a good shooter, but Innocente and Worley are not great scorers. Braden Smith has not been a good scorer. Huff obviously is a very good scorer, but it just was a lineup that was not really designed to – they didn't have any flow offensively, and you saw that play out. And again, Venters eventually ended the stretch by hitting a 3, but it was pretty rough when that lineup was on the floor. And I expect we won't see much of that lineup very, very much going forward because it just did not work for Gonzaga in this one. Well, folks, we said Gonzaga needed to keep Bama from shooting well from three. We also said that they needed to shoot well from three themselves, and they did one of those two things. We're going to talk more about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the NBA and college basketball, they are back in action, and there's no better place to get in on that action than at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you missed the start of a game, if you just want to ride out the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to predicting those fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay to get a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. We do not have odds right now as I'm recording this for Gonzaga versus Maryland or Gonzaga's odds to win the Players Era Festival, which they were second behind Houston. Houston went to overtime against Syracuse, so Gonzaga's odds might be top when those reset on Tuesday morning. But what we do know, Gonzaga minus 380 to win the WCC one final time. And right now, folks, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still recapping Gonzaga's very fun 10-point win over a top 10 team in the Alabama Crimson Tide, who, again, the AP poll refreshed on Monday. Didn't even mention that yet. Gonzaga moved up just one spot from 13 to 12, while Alabama is at number 8. And we'll see what that looks like next Monday. Still some games to go here this week, but obviously Gonzaga getting a nice W over a top 10 team. Here are the 5 things we laid out as keys to a victory for Gonzaga. Number 1 was they needed to lock down the perimeter. Alabama came into this game shooting 34% from 3, but shooting about 35 threes per game, so making about 12 of them. And we knew that Gonzaga's perimeter defense is great this year and hadn't really been tested by a strong outside shooting team, so we were very cautious but curious and excited to see how that would play out on Monday night. And the advantage was for Gonzaga. They held Alabama to 9 of 29 from 3. That's 31%. So they still made 9 threes, but they missed 20 of them. And I think for Gonzaga, it was a huge part of their ability to win was not only preventing Alabama from making their open threes, but preventing them from getting a lot of second chance opportunities as well. LeBaron Philon was 3 of 6 from 3 in this game. He does most of his damage around the rim, but the players who are expected to be those weapons on the perimeter, Aiden Holloway was 2 of 10. He didn't make his first one until about 7 minutes left in the second half. 2 of 10 for him. Latrell Wrightsell's the other really big three-point shooter. He did not play in this game as he is dealing with an injury, so that was a big loss for Alabama. And yeah, the rest of the team just did not get it done for them. And I mean, again, in the first half, for example, they were 3 of 14. Philon was 2 of 3. The rest of the team was 1 of 11. Like, they just could not knock down those open threes. Big shout out to guys like Worley and Inocente and Grant Foster for their perimeter defense and getting hands up to prevent them from getting those good looks. Key number 2 for Gonzaga was the opposite of that. Can they find their own outside shot? And outside of Steel Venters, no. The answer remains no for Gonzaga. They are just not a good three-point shooting team. And I think that they will find ways to be better there because they have good three-point shooters on the roster. But goodness, they have not been good. Gonzaga shot 6 of 22 from 3 in this game. They were 3 of 12 in the first half. They were 3 of 10 in the second half. So somewhat consistent in that regard. Again, Steel Venters was 4 of 8 from 3 in this one. The rest of the team was 2 of 14. That was Adam Miller going 1 of 5. Miller had some nice moments early in the second half, but was kind of a non-factor in this game. Probably should have included him in the not so good things in the first segment because he needs to find a way to impact this team outside of the three-point shooting, or else he needs to find a way to get red hot from 3, or else that playing time is going to slowly dwindle for him. Tyon Grant Foster was 1 of 4 from 3, great in every other facet of the game, just not a great three-point shooter. And then Smith, Inocente, Mario, as well as Graham and Braden, all of them went 0 of 1 each. So it wasn't anybody in particular missing a bunch of threes outside of Miller, but it's just not an area that Gonzaga is really excelling right now. And while it hasn't hurt him yet, it will. It is something that will be a problem for Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament. Fortunately, there's a lot of time between now and then, so hopefully they will find a way to get that sorted out. Key number 3 for Gonzaga in this game was to dominate on the glass. That has been a key pretty much every game, and they have checked it every single game. 48-36 advantage on the boards for them in this one. 20 offensive rebounds, 20 offensive boards for Gonzaga in this one. Incredible. 13 for Alabama, a lot of them coming in the second half. Gonzaga was more dominant on the glass early on, and kind of Alabama made some adjustments and did a little better in that spot. But 12, you out-rebound an SEC team by 12. You get 7 more offensive rebounds. You beat them in second chance points. You beat them in points in the paint, I think, by 10. Just, you imposed your will. You out-muscled this Alabama team. You were more physical, more intense, more tenacity. Again, Graham Ike had 11 rebounds. Tyon had 7 rebounds. Huff had 8. But all your starters had at least 3. Mario had 5. Adam Miller had 3. Jalen Worley had 3 off the bench. Like, just an all-around group effort to really keep this team off the glass, to prevent them from getting second chance opportunities, to give yourself multiple second chance opportunities. It was a huge part of Gonzaga's game plan, and it was a huge part of the reason they were successful on Monday night. Number 4, we kind of already touched on this, feed the bigs. We knew Gonzaga would. We knew that they were going to do that, and what we saw was Alabama pretty relentlessly double teaming, which is not a shock. In fact, I'm surprised when teams don't double team these two guys. And I think less athletic teams like Southern Utah, for example, when they attempt to double team, they just don't have the ability to kind of keep up with everybody else. And Graham and Braden are just so good at passing out of that. Alabama is athletic enough, and they kind of stunted their double teams, would send them at different times, would try to anticipate spin moves and try to come over and double there. And it worked. Not every time, obviously, but it worked, especially early on Graham. I mean, he was 0 of 6 to start the game. Amari Allen, I think, or it was Aiden Sherrill had a couple of blocks early in this game. Like, they really did take him out of his rhythm. And then he adjusted and he got to work. And from that point forward, there was just no stopping him again. When they wouldn't double him, he would get to his spots. He'd hit that little mid-range fadeaway shot. And even when they would double, sometimes he'd go through it. Sometimes he would kick it out. A lot of Grant Foster's scoring was kickouts to him. He would pump fake the 3, dribble drive, and score that way. That's how Mario got a lot of his points. Kick out to him. He drives. He gets fouled. He gets to the line. Like, they were able to be very effective at passing out of those double teams. But also, again, both of them were incredibly effective scoring the rock too. 39 combined points between the two of them. And again, outside of EK's 0 of 6 start, they were really efficient scoring the rock as well. And then number 5, our final key to a Gonzaga victory was to control the tempo. I'm not really sure they did. This game was played at a frenzy. This was a frenetic pace. And we, again, not a shock. Alabama's came into this game number 4 in KenPom in tempo. Gonzaga was only like 60th or like 58th or something like that. But we knew that Gonzaga likes to play fast. And we kind of expected maybe Alabama will attempt to speed up the guards. And I do think they tried to do that. They threw a lot of pressure at Mario, and he just handled it really well. For a player who's in his 6th collegiate basketball game, who in the first few games was struggling. He was struggling with kind of not the tempo necessarily, but he was struggling with rules and officiating, and was, not used to the amount of contact that they were allowing in some cases. And he just did not look like an inexperienced college player in this game at all. He handled the tempo well. Again, Gonzaga struggled in transition. When they actually had the opportunity to run and the green light to go, that was when they sort of struggled. I think that was maybe just a bit of a one-off thing. I do think it was part of this key. I think it was them recognizing, hey, we can run, we can go, and then kind of falling flat on their face when they attempted to do that. But when they played within themselves, when they didn't intentionally get sped up, they were really effective. There's one play later in this game with like 2 minutes to go. Mario was bringing the ball up, and I think it was a live ball turnover. There was like 3.5 minutes to go. It was a live ball turnover, so Mario starts to push automatically, which, yes, totally. You should pretty much always push on a live ball turnover. Recognizes the situation, recognizes the defenders in front of him, slows down because he knows, hey, we should just pull it out and get into our half-court offense. As he's slowing down, realizes that Graham Ike has slipped past the defense. He's wide open, and you could see it on Mario. As soon as he realized he just started to slow down, kind of change his posture, his body signaling a little bit, and then he just made a really quick one-handed bounce pass. Graham caught it, pump faked nobody, and still scored because Alabama had not gotten back on that play. But for Mario to recognize the situation, to recognize he should slow it down, and then recognize that one of the best scorers in college basketball is wide open under the basket. I should give him the rock. Was incredible processing from him, and again, just such a promising sign of things to come for him and for this Gonzaga team. Well, folks, Gonzaga's turning their attention to Buzz Williams and Maryland, who are tipped off and underway right now against UNLV. We're going to talk a little bit more about what they're going to throw at Gonzaga on Tuesday, less than 24 hours from now. All of that coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from this incredible win for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs over the Alabama Crimson Tide. Their second-ranked win of the season and their first-ranked win over a top 10 team, and a very likely path for them into the top 10 next week after finishing the AP poll this week, just moving up one spot to number 12. What I want to do now is talk about the Maryland Terrapins. And again, I know many of you are listening to the show on Tuesday before the game. This is not a live update for you, but obviously Maryland UNLV in action right now as we record this shortly after Gonzaga's game. But I'm going to give you kind of a primer on who Maryland has been up to this point in the season. This game between these two teams will take place at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, 24 hours to the minute after Gonzaga's game started against Alabama. It will not be on TNT like the game was on Monday night. It will instead be on True TV. If you're like me and you're just watching it with an HBO Max subscription, it should not matter, but it might matter for those of you on Fubo or YouTube TV or other places in terms of your ability to watch the game. The game will be in the same place. It'll still be at the MGM Garden Grand Arena in Las Vegas. The Zags have only played Maryland once, at least in the Mark Few era. That was back in 2008 in the semifinals of the Old Spice Classic. Gonzaga won that game 81-59 behind 22 points from Josh Heitfeld and a 17-point, 10-rebound double-double from Austin Day. The Terps 4-1 on the year again before the before the UNLV result. Their wins for Maryland: Coppin State, who's 364th at Ken Palm, Alcorn State, who's 337th, and Mount St. Mary's, who's 280th. So none of those wins all that impressive. They did beat Marquette. However, Marquette currently 78th at Ken Palm, which is about 40 spots lower than they were to begin the season. Marquette is off to a awful start to the season over there in the Big East. This was a road win for Maryland, though, so you still go into Marquette's house and pick up a W. Buzz Williams, the current head coach at Maryland, used to coach at Marquette, so for him it was a nice homecoming and a chance to pick up a nice W. The only loss for Maryland at this point is against Georgetown, who's 79th at Ken Palm. So another another Big East team for Maryland. They're 68th at Ken Palm. They began the season 34th, so they have not fared very well in those Ken Palm standings. Their offense is outside the top 80, their defense just inside the top 60. But the big story for Maryland is the health of Pharrel Payne, because Payne is unquestionably Maryland's best player. He followed Buzz Williams, who was the head coach at Texas A&M. He took the head coaching job at Maryland and brought some players from A&M with him, including Pharrel Payne. Payne averaged, I think he had like two consecutive games where he had 25-plus points and 10 rebounds, and they were like in the SEC and NCAA tournament last year at A&M. So he kind of really came on late at this end of the year, transfers to Maryland, and got off to an incredible start this year, 18.6 boards, 71% from the field. But in the game against Marquette, Pharrel Payne went down with a horrific-looking injury. His body splayed out in a way that was incredibly unnatural. I'll say this: if you are squeamish, do not look up the video. If you're somebody who's maybe morbidly curious about these videos, it might be worth checking out, especially because he's fine. That's the crazy thing, is he seems to be okay. He recovered much faster from that injury than possible. So we assume he's going to play against Gonzaga on Tuesday night. He's 6'9", so he's a little undersized compared to Graham and Braden, but he is a physical player. He's a talented player for Gonzaga. They will need to get him in foul trouble as much as possible. He's not a great defensive player, so I don't think he's going to be able to stop Graham or slow him down too dramatically, but he's going to score a lot. And if Graham and Braden are not careful, he could get them in foul trouble, which would certainly be problematic for Gonzaga in this one. Outside of Pharrel Payne, a couple other familiar faces on this roster, especially for those of you who also follow Washington State. Miles Rice, who was at Wazoo a couple of years ago on that NCAA tournament team. He transferred to Indiana for some reason, played on the Hoosiers team last year, and then transferred to Maryland. 19 points, 7 boards in his lone game with the Terps, but he is playing in this game against UNLV, so he is expected to suit up for Maryland against Gonzaga on Tuesday night. Isaiah Watts, also a former Washington State guard. He transferred directly from Wazoo to Maryland. He's averaging about 6.5 points and 1.5 assists off the bench for the Terps. They also have Elijah Saunders. Elijah Saunders is from Seattle area, played at Virginia, and then played at San Diego State and then played at Virginia and is now at Maryland. He's been very good for them. 10.5 points, 5.5 boards. Gonzaga squared off against him a couple of times. He's going to be a bit of a challenge. He's just really rugged, physical, tough player. He's going to make it a little harder for Gonzaga to dominate on the glass the way that they have against pretty much everybody they have faced so far this year. And then the star player that's not Pharrel Payne, I should say, for this Maryland team, that's David Coit. He played at Northern Illinois, was phenomenal for them. And then he transferred to Kansas. And last year for Kansas, came off the bench, averages 5 points per game. Not a particularly impactful player for the Jayhawks. Transfers to Maryland. And in the one game that Payne did not play, Diggy Coit had 41. Now, yes, it was against Mount St. Mary's, not a particularly great opponent or anything like that, but 41 points in a college basketball game in any capacity is ridiculous. So Coit definitely a name to keep an eye on, considering Gonzaga just withstood a barrage of scoring from arguably the best point guard, or at least the best scoring guard in college basketball in LeBaron Philon. Considering Gonzaga was able to withstand that, they'll probably be able to deal with Diggy Coit, who is 5 inches shorter than LeBaron Philon at 5'10", but he is certainly a name to keep an eye. He's more structurally looks like Mo Odom, not quite as good of a passer, more of a scorer player than Odom, but a player in that vein in some ways for Maryland. He's averaging 18.5 points, 3 assists, and just over a steal per game for the Terps. We'll do a really kind of a rapid fire keys to the game for Gonzaga. If Payne plays, you got to get him in foul trouble. Yeah, I think you go at him right away. If they're playing single coverage, if you're Graham, you just go right through the contact. Either you're going to score or you're going to get fouled, or ideally both. And if Payne's on the bench, that's a huge advantage for Gonzaga in this one. You also got to force tough shots. Maryland, kind of like Alabama, they take a lot of their shots from the three-point line. 46% of their field goal attempts are from deep for Maryland, or for Alabama. I think it was like 51% or 52%. So they're going to shoot a lot of threes. And they have some good three-point shooters. Again, a healthy Rice and Watts are good three-point shooters. Coit is a good three-point shooter. So I think you want to keep them off the line. You want to force tough shots, get your hand up. And then, of course, the same thing it always been, dominate on the glass. Get second chance opportunities. Don't allow Maryland to have too many second chance opportunities. I think in this specific situation, obviously, the fact that Gonzaga will be playing 24 hours later, that's never easy. But Maryland is playing like 21 hours later. Like, they have a little bit shorter time, a little bit less recovery time. Gonzaga also just has massive amounts of depth. And we saw them play Davis Vogel for the last 90 seconds of the first half in this game. That was entirely to prevent somebody from picking up a foul. That Mark Few has always done that. But the fact that that's the player they can bring in that situation, pretty clear proof of how much depth is on this roster. Ismaila Diani did not even play in this game. And again, you're going to play Graham Ike as many minutes as he's able to play on Tuesday night. But it'd be pretty great if Gonzaga could put themselves in a position where Ismaila Diani could play 12 minutes in that game, or Davis Vogel can play 10 minutes in that game. And, I don't think you need to be up 20 points to do that. Mark Few's typically kind of hesitant to play his non-rotation guys until he's got a very comfortable lead. But in this game, I'd be pretty fine with Diani playing first half minutes, with Vogel playing first half minutes, or with those guys playing in maybe a 12-point game instead of a 20-point game, because you're going to need these guys to be fresh for whatever time they play, likely on Wednesday, although we do not know for sure. I would expect that Gonzaga will be in the conversation to be in the Final Four, which those games would be at, I think, 4 and 6:30 p.m. So they should play Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. But yeah, you want to have Graham and Braden and Mario as fresh as possible, which means you want to be able to play Diani and Vogel and Braden and Smith and those guys more minutes in this game against Maryland. So while that's not necessarily a key to a victory for Gonzaga, it's more of a, hey, this is something they should do if they're in a position to win this game, so that they're in a better position to win that game on Wednesday and come home with some real cash from the Players Era Festival. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day, or in this case, for those of you live, the last listen of the day here as we wrap up a very fun Monday night watching Gonzaga take down Alabama in Las Vegas. Be back with more stuff for you all tomorrow, but until then, have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.